Hello?
Hey,
I don't think that worked.
it says on our end that it's streaming on Facebook.
Oh,
So, hey, Facebook.
let's check and see if we're up and going or not. Yes, okay. Looks like we're here.
Great.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're here with Garden Variety Harvests, and they are an urban farm that the Agrarian Trust we're working with. And yeah, hey, how are you guys?
Hi.
We're good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, been super good. Good day. Do you guys want to go ahead and just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your farm and what you've been up to recently?
Sure. You go first.
Me first. No, you start at the farm. You gotta go.
Okay. My name is Cameron Terry. I'm originally from Colorado, but we are farming in Roanoke, Virginia. We moved here to Roanoke a little less than 4 years ago. And for me, it was with the mission of starting this urban farming business. I knew that I wanted to try to grow food for a living, but I didn't have land to do it on. So we moved here because Chloe's parents lived here and they offered me the opportunity to start an urban farming business using their backyard. And I didn't have a whole lot of other great farming prospects. So we decided to make a go of that. So we've been growing food in yards and in community garden space for market for the last 3 years, and it's been great. We sell at a farmers market here in town, and we also sell to a handful of restaurants, and it has been every bit as fulfilling as I hoped it would be when I decided to leave a career in media and start farming my dream.
Oh, that's great. So you're saying that you got started farming a yard. I heard that you then branched out to finding other urban yards to farm in.
Yeah, so the farming network has been, it kind of swells a little bit in the off season and then contracts a little bit. So we've gone from, well, we started with 1 yard. I think the largest the network ever was 6 yards.
Oh, wow.
And this year we'll be farming on 5 different properties. And I basically pay my rent in vegetables, right? So people go on my website and they tell me that they want me to farm their yard. And then if it works out, then I basically sell them a share in a CSA as payment for the use of their land. And that seems to be a pretty good situation for most people. Most of the people that I'm working with, they want their space to be used for something useful, and they want to not mow the lawn. And so I can solve both of those problems at the same time.
That's so cool. And so what kind of crops do you typically grow in these urban plots?
It's a mixed market vegetable farm. I just counted the planting schedule for this year has 44 different vegetables on it. But we really focus on the high value stuff, leafy greens like lettuces and kales, arugula, spinach. Those are kind of the big money makers, and a lot of the other stuff, the cucumbers and the tomatoes, we grow almost just because we have to, because the people at the farmers market would complain if we didn't. But
Yeah.
it's all fun.
Cool. So the model of farming on urban agriculture plots that people just kind of like open up to you and let you farm on in exchange for vegetables, it sounds like maybe that's not like your forever dream and that maybe you're looking for land.
Yeah. And it never was the forever dream. There's a lot of inefficiency involved in farming yards, especially in a city like Roanoke, where everything is just kind of sprawled and spread out. And so I do a lot of driving in my leader pickup truck to get from place to place and stuff like that. I started farming yards because I didn't have anywhere else to farm. But the hope has always been to get to the point where we can um, responsibly find a piece of land that we can run the entire farm on, without incurring a mountain of debt that we have to climb out from under to try to make the business work. So um, in the original business plan, the hope was by year 5 we are moving out of this model, and um, I couldn't have predicted all the things that would happen in between, but we're on track for that. We hope that years 5 and 6 will take place on land that is all in one place and securely tenured.
Wow, cool. And so you're working with the Agrarian Trust, working with us to do this, to make this happen?
Absolutely, yeah. I met one of the staff members of the Agrarian Trust, Eliza Spellman, was a fellow farmers market vendor of ours. And so that's where I met her, and she started introducing me to the ideas of the Commons model and stuff like that. And she told me, I don't know, 2 years ago that the Agrarian Trust was going to help me find a farm. And I didn't really understand what she meant when she said that. But the more I kind of learned about the ideals of the Commons model and this idea of community ownership of agricultural land, it really just speaks to me. I don't think that small farmers should be on the hook for mountains of debt to be able to feed their communities, and the Commons model offers a way where everybody can be invested in the success of a small farm business, and we want to build a farm that is a community space. And so what better way to guarantee that is a community space that's used by the people around than for it to be community owned.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so awesome. So I'm so glad that you found the Agrarian Trust and that they found you and that you guys are able to work together now. So in the land search then, are they helping you find land?
Yeah. So, well, there is some weird stuff happening on the audio on this computer right now. Can you still?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, I'm gonna muscle through.
I guess you are breaking up just a little bit, but it's okay.
Yeah, they're definitely helping in farming land. I think that in finding land, I think that the biggest asset to me so far with the Commons has been just the network of people that are on our Commons board are people that know things that I have no experience with. We have a representative from a law firm. We have one person who's part of a land trust. We have so much experience in all the like back end stuff of how you get a farm established that is really, really helpful to me. Like I say all the time that my business is very simple. It's grow veg and sell veg, and anything on top of that, it takes a lot of mind power and research for me to be able to be competent at it. So it's nice to have what feels like a bit of an army of people out there helping us find this land. So the public land search started in, what was it, September or October maybe, and we just kind of, in all the ways we know how, through our blogs and YouTube videos and through our farmers market stand, we started telling people that we were looking for land. And the Commons has helped us like field all of those requests and get things organized and look at GIS maps and stuff like that, and scheduled appointments with realtors and stuff like that, and help us know when an idea may not be the best fit for our farm also. It's been an incredible sounding board. We've had 15 different opportunities have kind of bubbled to the surface since we started the public land search, and being able to have these conversations with people who understand this stuff has been a godsend. It's been really, really helpful.
So you just said something that I am completely unaware of and don't know anything about, and that was the GIS mapping. Like, what? That sounds like something like that the Army would do or something. Like, what is that about?
Well, and it's really funny because my dad was a map maker by trade, and so when I told him I was working with GIS maps, he was over the moon about it. He was just like so interested. So I guess part of it is in my blood, but you know, every municipality, every county has a digital representation of where property lines are, somewhere, and it has to be publicly accessible, but every county does it differently, right? And so Roanoke, or the city that we live in, is surrounded by 5 different counties, and every county has its own system, and every system has its different glitches and stuff like that. You kind of have to massage each of these systems the right way to get the data that you want from them, right? And and so having people on the Commons board who know how to work these systems has been really helpful. Like I feel competent in using those systems now, but it's only because people showed me where this layer function or this button was, to be able to use those maps. But it's really great. Like when I have somebody email me and say that they have a piece of land that they think might be a fit for the Commons, my first question is the address, and then I can take that address and go figure out on GIS what the land looks like. I mean, there's no substitute for like walking on the land, but the GIS data is like the second best thing.
So is it just, are you saying it's parcel maps for like tax ID? Is that
Yes.
what it shows you?
Yeah, I think it stands for Geographical Information System. It's basically like a, it's like GPS, but not quite as user friendly. Works on the same system of satellite data and stuff like that, but the GIS is like the back end that all the professionals use, and GPS is just what you have on your phone, right?
Okay, so that's so interesting. So with the Agrarian Trust's help, you've been looking for land using GIS mapping, which you're saying is like shows you the outline of the property. Does it show you any sort of like topography or like altitudes, or I guess it would show water and
Yeah, yeah, and
natural
it's
features?
been really helpful with like where floodplain data is at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it shows topography, basically anything that you can imagine. There's even a box you can check for like what school would my kids go to if I lived in this house, you know, like
Wow.
it can be very detailed, but like with all that data there, it's helpful to have somebody who kind of knows how these systems work to be able to kind of walk you through it.
And so, in addition to helping with the GIS mapping, are there other ways that the Agrarian Trust has been helping you find your new forever farm? Like, I guess, like reaching out to landowners is something that you mentioned.
Yep. Yeah. We sent, they helped me generate a list of potential properties in the area. And we kind of looked at every property on the list and probably weeded out the ones that we didn't think made sense for us. And then the Commons set up a basically a letter folding line, and licked envelopes and stamped stuff, and we sent out over 100 letters to possible properties and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I actually just came about 45 minutes ago. I came home from meeting at one of our potential farm opportunities with another member of the Commons, because I was struggling to figure out like where the best place for a house on this property would be, or whether this well would be capable of providing all the water that we need for the vegetable operation, stuff like that. And Adam, is the guy's name. He is a member of our Commons, and he actually built his own house.
I
And
know Adam. I actually know Adam
oh,
too.
right. So
Small world.
he built this wonderful log mahal on his property, and when I saw that, I said, well, I'm thinking about building a house. Can you show me where to put it? And so we went out and just kind of walked around the property for an hour and a half, and just kind of talked about farm layout. And that can be really helpful, right? Because I can sit at my computer all I want and like draw up all these maps and stuff, but it's really, really awesome to have somebody who has done this before, be able to walk the land with you. It's really invaluable.
Yeah, and you bring up a really interesting point too about the land and how it's not just about being arable farmland, but farmers need other things like housing, like water. Like those things are important that a lot of people don't think about when they think about what a farmer needs in a property.
Right.
So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's important. So, I was wondering more about your interest in like how you got started with working with the Agrarian Trust and like maybe kind of how the Commons aligns with your personal values and like maybe like the ideas of the farming practices as I know that the Agrarian Trust is really concerned with like regenerative farming and like no chemical farming and farming that's like ecological sound or ecologically sound. And I just wanted to touch base with you on that and see if that was like a reason that you wanted to join the Commons.
Absolutely. Do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, when I first heard of the Commons, like Cam was saying, he met Eliza at the farmers market. And did you join the board first before we were looking?
It was kind of, yeah, I guess I did. Yeah, she asked me to join the board.
Yeah, so Cam joined the board, and it was a lot of Cam telling me over and over what the Commons was and what they did, and me trying to understand exactly what it all meant. And then more I explained it to other people, then I finally felt like I understood. But then when we started thinking about looking for land for us to farm, I just like the idea of we don't have to own it. I don't care about owning land. That doesn't necessarily even make sense to me. So the fact that it could be through a nonprofit, that the whole idea is that they're making that space available for people to farm on, that was the appeal to me. It's like, I don't have to buy land. I just want to be able to work with Cam on growing food there and having a space that we can do that. So that was it for me. But Cam can say more about the principles of farming and that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our operation has been chemical free from the very beginning, and it's not because I'm trying to uphold some organic standard. I'm not organically certified, and I don't think I ever will be. But I think that we have to think more critically about what we're using, not just in agricultural spaces. I mean, in a place like we are here in Western Virginia, what people have done to their lawns in this part of the country has destroyed the Chesapeake Bay, right? We just lawn fertilizing companies, they don't care what happens downstream, right? And since I'm taking property that was formerly lawns, right, it's something I'm always thinking about is like, I know that what the neighbor across the street is doing is having a terrible downstream effect on the ecosystem. What can I do on my plot here that might be able to like counteract a little bit of what they're doing, or at least make the impact not so heavy? I People ask me all the time what's so wrong with Miracle Grow and that type of thing. Like I teach a lot of gardening classes and stuff like that, and I have these gardening students that they ask all the time, well, I use 7 because it kills the bugs, or I use Miracle Grow because it makes plants grow. And I when I started growing, I kind of committed to like, I'm not going to put anything on my plants that I wouldn't put in my mouth.
Okay, good
You
for
know?
you. So even though you're not organically certified, you still practice organic
Exactly
agriculture.
right. Like I think it's very simple. Like if you aren't willing to put it in your mouth, then you probably shouldn't put it on something that you're going to put in your mouth. Like that's not a whole lot different. And
Yeah.
I think that the principles that are outlined in the Agrarian Commons are they're flexible enough to allow somebody who needs to make changes to the way that they are farming their land um, for the success of that business, but they're not they're not so rigid to prevent you from making changes, but they make very clear that clear cutting and um, chemical pesticides and herbicides are not permissible on a farm that's community owned. And I think that's the way it should be. Like if I am stewarding land for the community, I should be doing it in a way that the community is comfortable with, you know?
Right. And it's also about the future generations to come and like what we're doing to the world as a whole and the environment and climate change and just trying to have like a positive impact on the environment and the land we're stewarding. I wanted to go back to what you just said, Chloe, though, about how one of the things that you loved about the Agrarian Commons and the Agrarian Trust model is that farmers don't need to own land. I think that's such a valuable point that you bring up because it is a main part of the Agrarian Commons structure. And also, it's something that a lot of people maybe have an initial repulsion to because our capitalistic ideas and the way that we've all been brought up is that individuals own land. Like, I own this, you don't. But the ability to have a mind and cultural shift to where we all start to agree that, well, I don't need to own this personally, but I can have the right to tend this land, and I can have the right to produce on this land, and I can have the right to make a business and make a living on this land, and then even pass it down to my children. All of those things are still available in the Agrarian Commons model, even though someone doesn't fully and outright own it. And I wonder if you immediately felt that way or if that took like some convincing and some conversation to bring you to the point that you're at now where you accept and even appreciate that model, or if that was just immediately like, of course, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think for both of us, that was pretty fine from the get-go. And like, I don't know, now it feels preferred.
Yeah.
Definitely, like, it wasn't hard for us to come around to. And then what's been interesting and I guess exciting is that the more we talk about the land search with people, they'll try and help if they can, or maybe they know someone with land. But even if not, then people are opening up to this new perspective, right? And maybe it's new for some people when they're hearing us talk about, well, no, we don't care about owning the land. We just want to be able to farm it and grow food for our neighbors. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So people hearing that, and it's like spreading that kind of idea that, well, just because this has been the narrative that that's what brings worth or value or whatever, it's owning land, maybe that it doesn't have to be that way. So it's been nice speaking with other people about that idea.
Right. And I cannot help but notice that you have quite a beautiful accent.
Thank you.
Where are you from?
I grew up in England till I was 16, and then moved to Colorado, which is where I met Cam, and then we came here.
So you are an immigrant here in the United States. Well, welcome. We're so happy to have you. So can you tell me any about how maybe your culture or your the life that you led in a different country has impacted the way that you look at farming or agriculture and the relationship with the Agrarian Commons here?
Well, I did grow up in a really rural area in the Southwest, so I was surrounded by farms, but we lived in a really small town, and we had like horses and things like that, but we didn't do really like growing of food or anything like that. And it was a lot of livestock in the area, so I don't know. I didn't have really any kind of close interaction with it or understanding or appreciation, I would say, really, until coming here and meeting Cam. Like, him growing food in the middle of downtown Denver really opened up. And I worked in restaurants, right? So I'm like selling food, like through college, I'm working in restaurants, serving food. And no, I never grew my own food, nothing like that until I met Cam, and then
Amazing.
considering all these different ideas and the importance and things like that.
Yeah, well, cool. I guess next I was wondering, what kind of opportunities are you both hoping come from this partnership, like for yourselves, for your community at large, for the land that you'll be stewarding?
We talk a lot about whether or not a farmer can expect to make their sole living from farming, right? And so many of the people I know who farm have to have off-farm jobs to make it work. And one of the big things about this land search with the Agrarian Commons for me is we envision a household in which both of us are drawing our income from the farm operations. Now, that may not be both of us working in the fields on a daily basis, but I really believe in the capacity of a farm business to be all that a family needs, right? And um, maybe not all couples are this way, but I feel like Chloe and I do work really well together. I wouldn't have a problem with like this being my coworker, you know? And so um, I think that's a really exciting part of this land search is the idea that we could both be working um, and drawing our entire income from a farm business that we're doing together. Um, I think that could be a really fulfilling thing for us.
And probably one of the reasons that that's even a possibility is just because the land price itself isn't going to be a huge debt burden. Because that seems like a huge obstacle for most farmers is that they purchase land, but now they're in debt forever under this huge weight of the land price. So being able to escape that is probably helping you move forward into a better future of farming.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think, you know, we're very comfortable with the idea of paying rent. That's something we've done for a while. And if what we're doing on the farm can support it, then we're very happy to do that. But if we are saddled with, you know, $250,000 in land debt, it makes the business very inflexible. And that's why people start to go elsewhere to find their income because maybe the farm isn't profitable yet. You know, like these things take time. And the opportunity with the commons would mean that the business very inflexible. And that's why people start to go elsewhere to find their income because maybe the farm isn't profitable yet. You know, like these things take time. And the opportunity with the commons would mean that the business very inflexible. And that's why people start to go elsewhere to find their income because maybe the farm isn't profitable yet. You know, like these things take time. And
it's playing back and forth to us.
Okay.
Do you?
Sorry.
All right.
Anyway. As you were saying, so those are ways that it's going to benefit you guys. And so what about some ways that it'll benefit your community at large?
I think this is a good one for you.
Oh, well, one of the things I hope we can do is hire some young people. So I work at the Boys and Girls Club and I've done youth work for a while. And I've kind of worked my way up from like working with second grade, working with third grade, middle school, and now with high school kids. And I think if we can create some jobs, whether it's through farm cafe, so that's kind of more my experience is young people and then working in restaurants. So like bringing those together a little bit to create first jobs for young people, or if people are interested in working with CAM, like apprenticeships, things like that. That's something that I would like to be able to create. It probably won't be on a massive scale, but still very impactful, I think.
So you're saying that one of the ways that your farm will benefit the community is by giving community members a place to connect with land.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely.
That's sweet.
And I also think that's not the only way that we hope to offer people a chance to connect with land. Also, like, you know, if the space is owned by the community, we will make every effort to make the community feel like they are welcome there, whether that's like a picnic area or a hiking trail, or, you know, I think growing, if we as local food producers expect people to invest in local food and trust us enough to give us their money for the food, we have to sell more than the food. I think we have to sell the story and the experience, and those can all be avenues by which people start to value food at a higher level, which is something that farmers are always complaining about, right? Like, people don't want to pay me what my food is worth. And I think that having a space that is open to the community where people can come and see how these things are done and how much work it takes, and then they're going to be more willing to part with their dollars and participate in this local food system in the ways that we hope that they will. So we want people on the farm as much as possible to take on those experiences that will affect the way that they see food.
That's so good. That's so good. That feels good. I was wondering, Chloe mentioned how originally, when you found out about the Agrarian Commons model, that it was kind of confusing to you. Maybe it was kind of harder for you to understand. And I wondered, like, what aspects maybe were confusing to you that we could like explain to people right now. Like, I bet a lot of people agree with you that maybe the model itself is kind of confusing. Um, so the farmers don't own the land, but the community commons land board does. And then you pay a lease to the commons board, and then that money is used for infrastructure or just whatever problems that you come up with in the future that need funding. So what was it about it that you were like, oh, actually that makes sense, or that's a good way, because it is very unique. It's a very different model than we see anywhere else in the United States.
Yeah, I like to tell people that the Agrarian Commons is like any other land trust you've ever heard of with an agricultural purpose. Um, and some of the concerns that I had when the model was first introduced to me was, if I'm leasing property from the commons and I need to build a road or a piece of infrastructure, um, who pays for it, and how, right? And if I'm never going to own it, why as a farmer would I want to invest into a piece of property that I could be removed from, right? But the commons model solves those problems pretty easily, right? Your lease is long term, 99 years in the state of Virginia, and rolling and inheritable, and um, and it's an equitable lease, meaning that as the farmer, if you make infrastructure improvements and then you choose down the road to leave that property, then you are made whole for the infrastructure improvements that you've put on the land. So you don't have to just leave with your backpack and go try to do something else, right? Like, if I invested a certain amount of money in this property, the commons will make me whole as I try to go and do whatever it is I want to do next. And then that infrastructure is there for the next farmer to take and run with, right? And then the other big hurdle for me when I was like first starting to play with these ideas of the commons was, um, where is the land coming from, right? We think of land as a finite resource, and it is. Um, and so I'm thinking, well, are people just giving land to the commons for no reason? Well, in some cases they are, but it's most likely it's not for no reason, right? There are, donating land into a land trust is a huge tax write-off, and so people are not doing this for free. And I have been pleasantly surprised the number of people that I meet who um, take local food sovereignty seriously enough that they would consider this sort of a gift, right? Like, they think that it is important that future generations have a way to feed themselves, and so they would consider something like this. And these conversations with people, we are asking people, when we introduce them to the commons model, we're asking them to think about this in a different way. And sometimes you have to explain it a few times to get things to sink in. I know I really didn't get it the first 4 or 5 times Eliza tried to explain it to me. But once it sinks in, like, it kind of becomes part of, at least as a farmer, it's become part of my value set, right? And there's not another way that I would prefer to be searching for my forever farm.
Aw, that's so great. Thank you. Yeah, so it sounds like you at first were like, why would I want to just lease land from somebody else who owned it? But then you saw like how that would benefit you in the future, and like how the farmer's still building equity in the property, and how any infrastructure or improvements that you made to the land would still be owned by you and would still like you would hold tenure in that. And that's so great that I think that's something that people do wonder about, and maybe someone is learning about right now as they watch this, that they start to understand more that they are still like holding value on that land, even if they don't actually own the deed to that land. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Sure.
I kind of wonder now also about the professional goals that you have and how the Commons are going to support that with garden variety harvest. And then I'm not sure if we've talked about Adorn yet, if you wanted to maybe kind of expound upon that a little bit.
Yeah, so Adorn is the name of the farm cafe that we would want to build. So, well, you go and then I'll continue.
Okay. Professional goals for garden variety harvests are not, there's nothing massive, you know, like I really just want to be a small farm that employs a small team and feeds our neighbors and friends, you know, um, and so I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. Um, we're just trying to build a vegetable operation that is efficient and wholesome and responsible, you know. And I've had the pleasure of meeting through the farmers market and other channels here in town, you know, a few farmers who have operations that I really admire and would aspire to, you know. And so um, I think that, like, I don't believe in the infinite growth principle as a business person. Like, I don't believe that my business needs to post growth every year, and if it's not successful. Like, I don't. You can miss me with that, right? So I think that the business that I envision is a handful of farm hands working 2 or 3 acres of vegetables and some additional crops like fruits and berries, and selling all those things within 50 miles of where the farm is, and selling some of those things on site, maybe through prepared food at Adorn. Um, and I really don't feel compelled to try to grow any further than that. Like, I think that's a perfectly responsible size business to have. And that's what farming was up until about 80 years ago. And I'm just trying to kind of revert back to what farming used to be before, before chemical agriculture, you know?
So, a lot of farms don't have the opportunity to sell within, like you suggested, like 50 miles, but you as an urban farm that it's going to be right next to a big city has that unique opportunity. And that's one of the things that's so interesting about working with you all, is that you are this urban farm that's so close to a large populace of people who need to eat food that needs to be grown regeneratively and sustainably for our climate and the environment that needs help.
Yeah.
So we're glad you're doing what you're doing, and we're happy that we get to be a part of it. I have to just touch back on something you said earlier about the Agrarian Trust being just like a land trust. I mean, it's so different. The Agrarian Trust is so different than any other land trust out there. I mean, it's the only one in the nation that has this commons model. It's the only one that preserves particularly farmland in perpetuity and can pass it down. And it's the only one that focuses on the actual farming methods that people are going to practice once they're put on that land. And that makes us very unique. And the fact that we're able to that's only like 2% of the farms in the nation that are using regenerative and sustainable organic practices. So it's actually a very small part of what hopefully will become a larger group of people in the future practicing farming like this. But right now, unfortunately, we're in the minority.
Yeah, I think that, you know, when you're trying to talk to people who don't understand the commons model and trying to explain it to them, um, the New River Land Trust, which is a local land trust here, is kind of a good springboard to try to explain it, but you're right, it is completely different, right? Like when the Blue Ridge Land Conservancy or the New River Land Trust puts an easement on a piece of property, it's for a very specific reason. And while all those reasons are well and good, they are not feeding people.
Yeah,
And
and it can be limiting sometimes. And then just, I mean, putting an easement on a piece of property just to resell it does not keep land in holding in the way that we just talked about in like regenerative or sustainable practices, or like you said, feeding people. Like, what better value to a community can a land be than to produce its food?
that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Getting worked up, getting excited. You guys are pumping me up. Anyway, so is there anything else that you guys want to share, maybe about like your business or the land search process, or how Agrarian Trust is helping through the Commons model to help you all meet your professional and personal goals in your business, and or just like in the land search in general?
Well, I didn't really finish answering the other question about professional goals. So Adorn, yes, would be like the farm cafe. I would want to call it Adorn Public House, which is the long form of pub, right? Like the English pub. So kind of a play on the pub in England being the gathering place for people. But I don't want the crux to be around beer. Maybe there'll be beer there sometimes, but I would want it to be around food and tea is what I'd want it to be around. So the way the Commons would help is really just giving us a secure place for Cam to grow the food and us to partner in that way, and us to be able to focus on building that, and then we would have that piece to join with the farm to bring people to it.
Thank you so much for expounding upon that. That's
Thank you.
a good point. So we do have a couple of viewer questions that we should address. Someone is asking, how would regional collaboration look with multiple farms under one commons? Did you all want to speak to that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna talk about something that's not directly answering the question, and then we'll come to the answer.
Okay, I'll answer it if you don't.
So a lot of the land search opportunities that have been presented to us so far are very large swaths of land, right? Like upwards of 100 acres in some cases, right? And the vegetable operation that I envision does not take up more than 5 or 8 acres maximum, right? And so one of the things that's been really fun is to envision how more than one farming business can come together on one piece of Agrarian Commons land, right? So if the back 80 acres is of no use to me as a vegetable farmer, but could be really great for somebody who wants to run goats or pigs in silvopasture or something like that, those are ways that we can have multiple farm businesses come together under the umbrella of one piece of property, right? But that's not really regional, right? The way that the question was asked, that's one piece of property, right? And what I say about regional collaboration is that Roanoke has several small farming communities kind of within an hour of us, right? So there's Floyd, and then there's the Craig County area, and all of those regions have somebody representing them on the Commons board, all right. So when we come into a situation where there's more land than Garden Variety Harvest could ever use in a certain opportunity, somebody else on the board will know, hey, this person down in Floyd is also looking for land. Maybe that's an opportunity to bring people together on a single piece of land that's like halfway between here and Floyd, right? So I think that even in a place like Southwest Virginia, where there are a lot of small family-owned farms, there is always room for more collaboration, right? Whether it's bringing new products into farm stores, or, with online sales, taking up so much more of the marketplace this year because of COVID. Like, how can you aggregate products from different sectors to be able to serve people all the bounty that a food shed has to offer.
Right.
I think that, you know, the Commons serves as a way to kind of bring all those people together, so that we can take up more of the food, like be serving more of the food pie that everybody receives.
Yeah, so your vision is that eventually the Agrarian Commons does not just include you as a vegetable farmer, but includes other parts of its full diet that could be produced in your area. That's such a great example. Thank you so much for speaking to that. And I'll just add that in general, the Commons model has multiple farms on the board, and that local board then gets to decide what areas to work in, what missions to focus on, particularly like what their Commons goals and objectives are going to be, like what their bylaws are going to be. So that is all very regional based. That's not something that the National Agrarian Trust Organization puts into place. So that makes it, you know, just very centralized to that local area and like makes it best for that community. So thank you for sharing what your vision is for your local community in response to the question about collaboration. So someone else wants to know, when you guys find a land that will hopefully be your forever farm, will the Agrarian Trust or the Southwest Agrarian Commons launch a fundraising campaign to buy the land so that it then goes into the Commons, which you then lease from the Commons?
Yeah, that's one path, and probably the most likely path. So we would, when we find the opportunity that we like the best, we'll create a business plan and a farm plan around it. And once we feel like that plan is on solid footing, then we would launch a public fundraiser so that we can do the land transfer into the Commons. And then, yes, we would lease that land from the Commons. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. I think we answered all the questions that have been submitted. And I think we've answered all of my questions too. Well, it has just been so fun getting to chat with you guys and getting to connect with you. And sorry, my cat just put her down on the video. But it's been so fun getting to talk and meet with you. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your experiences and with the Agrarian Trust and the Agrarian Commons so far. It's been super good getting to hear about the perspective from a farmer instead of always from the Agrarian Trust side. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
All right. Well, I guess we'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Bye.